Welcome everyone to the Municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc, our regular council session on Monday, November 4th, 2024. The Municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc acknowledges it is located on Treaty 21 territory. We are thankful to the generations of people who have taken care of this land, including the Chippewa-Thames First Nation, the Munsee Delaware First Nation, and the Oneida Nation of the Thames. Before I bring the roll call, I'm just glad to see a full gallery this evening. I always remind the gallery of our decorum that no comments or anything from the gallery, but it's a pleasure to have you. So with that, roll call. Councillor Kennis is absent with notice. Councillor Brennan has his proxy. Motion of the November 4th, 2024 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated. Councillor Hippel, second by the Deputy Mayor. Any corrections, questions? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Wilsey.
I've got a pecuniary interest for item 4.1.
Okay, thank you. Well, we will, and with that, we'll go right into 4.1. So you want to excuse yourself? Motion to open the public meeting. This public meeting is to consider an application for zoning bylaw amendment for the property located at 8668 Longwoods Road, Mount Bridges. Motion to open. Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? Carried. And I believe someone else is going to present this evening, correct? Kim?
Through the mayor, yes. That would be David Wellwood from J.L. Richards. He is the retained by the county for situations such as this where one of the, or the application itself is borne by a councillor, or there's a potential for staff to have a conflict. So that's why it is David Wellwood from J.L. Richards that will be doing, pardon me, the presentation, and will be providing a commentary on this particular application. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We all teed up there?
Yes, so David is on the call.
Hello.
Hello, David. You're up.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for having me here tonight. I'm a senior planner with J.L. Richards and Associates, and I work with the county on planning files from time to time. So here we have an application for a zoning bylaw amendment from Gregory Wilsey and Cassandra Ogaic. Sorry if I've mispronounced that. My apologies. For a proposed the zoning bylaw amendment would facilitate a proposed secondary dwelling unit. Actually, before I proceed, do you folks have a copy of the presentation in front of you, or would you like me to share my screen?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay, I'll just get the host to allow screen sharing, and I'll be happy to share that. Or the host can share it if they wish.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next slide then. So the subject lands are located along Longwoods Road, which is County Road 2. It is just a couple kilometers west of the 402 at the corner of Mill Road. You can see here it's right at the intersection, and the front lot line for this property in the zoning bylaw is defined as Mill Road. This site is currently used for rural residential purposes, but it's surrounded by agricultural uses to the north and south. There's some other residential uses to the east. Next slide, please. So essentially what's proposed here, you can see if you look at the existing dwelling is kind of in the closest to the road here, and where these high fluorescent colored boxes are is the outline of the new dwelling. The new proposed dwelling is actually larger than the existing dwelling, so essentially the existing dwelling would become the additional residential unit, and the proposed dwelling would become the primary building on the property. So the proposed new dwelling is located west of the existing dwelling. That property actually has municipal water supply, and the rear beyond the parking area is for the outdoor amenity for the units. So if you look, you'll see an existing workshop and a shed that's already on the property. And they've outlined an attached garage beside the proposed dwelling that has a proposed driveway. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slides. And they've got an optional alternative location for a driveway marked on the site plan as well. We'll move on to the next slide. So this is perhaps a little bit easier to see. So you can see here that they proposed a two-story residence just to the west of the existing residence, and you can see there's an existing garage that's detached and an existing shed. I'm going to move on to the next section. We've received some comments from agency and staff. County Roads notes that only one access to the county road is permitted. So there's going to have to be a little bit of work done there to figure out exactly what configuration they want, since there is an existing driveway there, but it's not the driveway that's proposed to access the house. The other issue is that there is a livestock barn within 1 kilometer, so we're going to need to find out what the minimum distance separation is to that livestock barn. We have received one letter so far from members of the public. I'm not sure if there's the member who wrote the letter is in attendance, but they're welcome to speak to the application after my presentation. That's my understanding. Moving on to the next slide. So in the report, the preliminary report that's in front of you in your package, you'll note that we've gone over the various provincial policies, or provincial planning statement policies. The new provincial planning statement has replaced the provincial policy statement, as you may be aware. So we've looked at those, as well as the county official plan policies for the agricultural area. And it's also the local, the municipality's official plans policies for the agricultural area. In terms of the zoning bylaw, they are seeking a few exceptions from the provisions of the zoning bylaw. So this would become, should it be approved, an agricultural, go from was it currently an agricultural small holdings A2 zone to a site-specific agricultural small holdings exception 40 zone. And this would permit the secondary dwelling unit on the lot with a reduced exterior side yard width, an increased lot coverage for the accessory building, an increased size of the secondary suite. The existing accessory buildings would be permitted in the front yard where they currently are, and an increase to the maximum height would also be required, as well as a reduced setback from the center line of Longwoods Road. So move on to the next slide, which contains the next steps following tonight's meeting. So there would need to be potential amendments to the application as a result of tonight's meeting, including to address the comments I noted a couple of slides ago regarding MDS and the location of the driveway. We would then prepare a planning evaluation report with a recommendation for recommending a decision in one way or the other for the application. And we note that there is a 20-day appeal period for the zoning bylaw amendment, but only for specific agencies and for the applicants. So members of the public do not have a right to appeal this bylaw. And that is the end of my presentation. So I'm happy to turn it back over to you, members of council, for any questions from you or members of the public.
Thank you for that. Are there any comments in support of the proposed rezoning? Seeing none, are there any comments in opposition to the proposal? sir. Just ask you to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Richard Burkmartel, resident of Strathroy-Caradoc. I guess at a very high level, all the amendments are not in the intent, or not the intent of all the bylaws that are there. This is intended as an agricultural, or classified as an agricultural location. And there's really too many amendments and that distract from the initial purpose of all these proposals or rules and regulations that have been put forward. So, and they're not in line with the agricultural practices. This is really someone wanting to have two buildings on one property without following any of the, if it's a granny suite or if it's a secondary succession plan place. But also, there is a lot of, I think, precedent that's being set here for allowing all the A2 small parcel properties across Strathroy-Caradoc to be, have, or allow all these, at least seven deviations that's being requested as part of this proposal. Typically, the second house being larger than the primary house is not permitted. I know that they mentioned that they were going to reverse primary and secondary. Lot property, typically secondary house should not exceed 80% of the existing buildings. Secondary property can be allowed if they're full municipal services, which they are not. Yes, there is some water there, but there is no sewer services that are being supplied to that spot. And so also with the natural heritage system that's very close by, it's highlighted in the presentation that was presented there. There may be other studies that should be done or should be considered with respect to allowing this proposal. The proximity to the road and proximity to the heritage locations is a lot of deviations that's being requested. And possibly an EIF study is required. An official plan amendment might be required, and any other studies that make sure that this is a proper utilization of agricultural space. Those are my points.
Thank you. Any other comments in opposition to the proposal? Any comments and questions from members of council? Okay. Seeing none, a motion to close the public meeting. Councillor Hippel, second by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Carried. The motion is that the subject report BBP-2024-122 for zoning bylaw amendment be received for information. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Derbyshire. Any questions or comments on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Next is, you're welcome to come back and join us, Councillor. Yep. Next is public meeting number 2, motion to open the public meeting. This public meeting is to consider an application for zoning bylaw amendment for the Fieldcrest subdivision be hereby open. Someone to bring Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Wilsey. All in favor? Carried. Did we be presenting this report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As noted, this is a rezoning application for Fieldcrest. Fieldcrest subdivision is located on the north side of Carroll Street, just east of Caradoc. You can see from this picture, it's highlighting the yellow as being an area that is currently zoned OS, and the request is that this area be rezoned to a R3 high-density site-specific zoning. So this area to the south, directly to the south of it, is a plan of subdivision that was registered or is registered and has a number of roads, but not all of them have been constructed. So Willis Avenue, Abbott, and alike is a part of this subdivision. Those phases of the subdivision have been constructed, and those homes have been in place for a while now. And as we move further south of that towards Carroll, those are newer homes. And the developer is continuing to work through the process of extending or constructing the homes from that area, Alex, from that area that's existing over into these existing single lots that have been developed. But this parcel, the majority of this parcel was a part of a block set aside for a school. The school board, many years ago now, released that requirement for this site to be a school. And so now the developer is in a situation where they own a parcel that's designated, zoned OS. And behind that, if you can see sort of a triangular section of the area that is yellow, that triangular section is got another lot line between it. And that's because that was part of an open space and stormwater block. So if they were to proceed with developing the main block, they'd end up sort of blocking and or having the open space, the parkland, in behind the townhouses. So while this application was made in the early part of this year, and there was a significant pre-consultation before that, the developer and staff have worked, including with community services, to move that parkland area up to Willis Avenue. So when we move to the next slide, and even maybe the slide after that, you'll see that, because this is just the biggest one, this makes it easiest. So you'll see that there's a darker green park and then a lighter green area at the top. This is directly adjacent to the rail line, so there's going to be, the lighter area is directly adjacent to the rail line. That lighter area is going to need to have berms and alike for the purposes of protection of those townhouses if this were approved. But we're moving the park forward, we get a couple of different benefits. One, the visibility of the park. And second is access to both the park and the stormwater management block is improved. So as I say, those changes were made over time since the original application was made. But what we have in front of us tonight is 118 townhouse units on what will be in the future a vacant land condominium application. But for today, it's just a rezoning. A future site plan application would also be required. The report goes into all of the policy related background, but I will say that this is within the Strathroy settlement area. It's going to be on full municipal services. It is designated residential. Its zoning, as I said before, is OS or open space, and it needs to change as a result of that. So the last piece is, or could be a question, is how does the parkland look? In terms of this overall subdivision, this parkland that was designated before and what we're working with now are very similar in size and meet the requirements of the 5%. In terms of details, when we come to the site, to the townhouse development, these are private roads with visitor parking spaces throughout the development. It has 2 access points, one on Willis and one on Newton, which is to the south. It has townhouses that are addressing both Newton and all of the internal streets. There are some townhouses that are standard townhouses, and there are other ones that are back-to-back townhouses. So we have a variety of different townhouse designs here. And this is in a subdivision that is primarily single detached. Well, it's all single detached dwellings up to this point. So this would result in a variety of different housing types the houses directly adjacent to this particular block, I should say subject lands from now on, they're all unoccupied at this point, so if somebody were to purchase, they would be knowing that this is what's coming up beside them. So those are some of the major points. I would say that there are some comments that we're still working through, such as requests by engineering for some additional details on stormwater management. An overall stormwater management plan and report has been prepared for the subdivision, but not specifically for these townhouses. And so there's a little bit more detail that we're asking for from, and by we, I mean staff in general, are asking for on that front, and some similar items around the technical aspects of things. So maybe I can leave it at that and open to any questions that may come forward. I will say that since you have it up on the consultation side, I should note CN is looking for participation in the creation of the berm for safety reasons and the creation of berm for noise and vibration purposes, and so they would like that detail to be sorted out within their consultation. So this is something that was raised with the developer and agent for the developer, and the suggestion was that a hold on the zoning be put in place. So that may be the course, but we will continue to have conversations with CN, and we'll see what comes of that, and then the final report. That may be what you see, but I'm just sort of looking through my crystal ball when I say that to give you an idea. The next item was about Queen Street, and that's a discussion also, or sorry, it's not about Queen Street, but it's about the stormwater outlet that runs along the rail line and goes to Queen Street. And council may know this better than even I. That was an improved, works that were improved by council a while back. So the concern that they have is a little bit dated, and so we're going to work through that with them as well. So I'll leave it at that for now, and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Tim. Any comments in support of the proposed rezoning? You identify yourself for us, please?
Certainly, Your Worship, members of council, my name is Scott Allen. I'm with MHBC Planning. We're acting on behalf of the registered owner. This time, we'd like to advise council that we have reviewed the preliminary planning report for this application, and we agree with staff's initial findings. As outlined in the staff report, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is intended to reconfigure and complete the Fieldcrest subdivision, which is partially developed. In effect, the proposed zoning application would support efficient multi-unit housing options on the subject lands to help increase the local housing supply, diversify housing choice, and help increase or address market demand for attainable housing options. The conceptual cluster townhouse layout illustrated in the staff report has been refined in recent months, as Mr. Williams had noted, and in consultation with municipal staff. In our opinion, going forward, there are opportunities to address the outstanding matters, some of which have been described and some are certainly laid out in the staff report, and we look forward to working through those matters. From our overall perspective, the application and the design we feel is functional from a design perspective, and in keeping with the local development setting, recognizing that the majority of the land surrounding this particular subject lands or development blocks have not been developed at this point. Finally, it's anticipated that the matters that are outstanding can be addressed in the relatively near term, and we look forward to advancing the rezoning application before council in the near future. Thank you. We'll gladly answer any questions council have, and I'd also like to thank municipal staff for their assistance.
Any questions? Seeing none, any comments in opposition? Any comments and questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the development is great, certainly a good use of the lands and much needed housing for the community. I do have a concern with, now since these roads aren't labeled on the map that I'm looking at, there's, as you enter into the subdivision, I would say the long stretch of roadway that is closest to the train tracks, which has units in the 110 through 118, and on the other side of the road, 97 through 109. I'm concerned that that long stretch of road, Your Worship, should emergency services have to attend, per se, Unit 97 at the end of that street, where the hammerhead happened. It's a very long unit, and those emergency services could potentially get trapped in that area just by the mere number of people at their houses that they're driving by, or other emergency services. And I'm wondering why this road wouldn't extend back around, eliminating Unit 96, but then hook back into the road servicing out front of Unit 32.
Is that a question or a comment?
Well, it's a comment, but I don't know if Mr. Williams has addressed that already, or if it's been a consideration, or if it can just be noted that that's the only concern I have with the plan.
Mr. Williams?
Thank you to the Deputy Mayor. That's certainly something we can look at. It's only in the most recent revision that this particular configuration came up. It is something that we would normally address during site plan. I believe that there's still going to be some discussions as they build the berm, and there may be some adjustments to even where the visitor parking spaces are. This plan was primarily conceptual, but certainly the comments are noted, and I certainly understand where he's pointing to or discussing, and we will keep that top of mind as any changes occur and before this becomes a final plan.
Councillor Pelkman.
Yes, thank you. I'm thrilled to see the types of housing that are being proposed. I think that's the exact type of housing stock that we need to differentiate from single-family homes to provide different price points for people. Plus, I think the increase in density of housing, given the closeness to our commercial corridor there and the vast number of restaurants and other services that are offered, it supports our business community, having that many people live close to our businesses. The only suggestion that I would ask is that you have one entrance onto Willis, and I don't know the name of the street of the other entrance, but maybe move it over to the other street so the two entrances are a little farther apart. But I think primarily when I'm looking at it, the traffic flow would be people would probably enter onto Willis, and there's only, I counted 30 driveways before they enter onto a main arterial road, which would be Carroll Street. So I think it actually fits well in the rest of the subdivision design, even though that subdivision doesn't exist yet.
Councillor Wilsey, then Councillor Brennan.
My comment is when I'm looking at the depth of the front yards and the rear yards, some of these places have no rear yards at all. They're just buildings that are all built back to back. And just thinking back a couple of years ago of COVID, when people needed their own space and somewhere to go, if you only have a reduced front yard that's only 9 feet deep, you really don't have anywhere to go that's your own space. Just something for the planning to consider. I don't know what we would have to do to keep we couldn't keep the same density. I guess that comes down to lot area as well. It's quite a big deviation when we're down to less than half for the back-to-back units based on the 210 square meters that we need per unit. So my concern is just the area that they have and the area around it.
Councillor Brennan?
I guess my concern might be the distribution of what appears to be visitor parking. It seems to be concentrated in the upper right-hand corner of the plan, if that is indeed visitor parking. As Councillor Pelkman has pointed out in the past, if you're having a potluck supper, it's a long way to carry the scalloped potatoes if you're coming all the way from that parking area down to, block, house number 59, and you have to park beside house number, 97 or something. So the distribution of visitor parking, I think, is something I'd like to see maybe reconsidered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, motion of the public meeting to consider the application be closed. Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Wilsey, all in favor, carried. The motion in front of you is that the subject report BBP-2024-121 for ZBA 1-2024 be received for information. Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Hippel, all in favor, carried. Thank you. Public meeting number 3 is a meeting to consider a red line to draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for the Westdale Edgewood subdivision. Motion to open the public meeting. Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Pelkman, all in favor, carried. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So this is a red line revision to an existing draft plan approval, and I'm saying it slowly because this public meeting is happening, and then right after it is a public meeting for the northern piece of this same parcel of land. We need to do them as separate things. They will have separate decisions in the future. They will be considered separate items. But with that being said, I'm going to speak a little bit more during this section about context, and then a little bit less during the northern portion. And so I just want to put that in context right off the bat, just as we're doing this. So what's happening here, this is a red line revision. This is an existing plan of subdivision, SC 1702. Was draft approved in 2019, 2018, and the developers have been working through the number of conditions. At the same time, market conditions have changed, and they've requested that the lot frontages and in turn the lot areas be made smaller, which has increased the number of units from previously 83 to now 114 single detached dwellings within that same area. So what does that mean? From a zoning perspective, they do need adjustments to the zoning, and that's why that has been raised as part of the application. They're also requesting for corner lots that they not be required to have a 5-meter side yard setback, but rather a 3-meter side yard setback. That's we've seen in other plans of subdivision in the past, sometimes as minor variances as the development moves forward, but sometimes other. And in this particular case, where they're asking for those corner lots, there isn't the same streetscape or street line that one might be trying to protect with that. And so what I'm saying by that is that the front yard setback requirement in the zoning is 5 meters, and when you have a corner lot, it's also 5 meters, and it's designed that way so that as you're looking down the street, if you had a corner lot and you're looking down that visually, it would match. But where these corner units are, there isn't a street, where the exterior side yard is, there isn't also lots that are found on that same frontage. It's a little bit complicated as I tried to describe it this way, but essentially there's street frontages with only exterior side yards. So the impact of it would be minor in nature. We could actually even move past this one. I will just speak to some of the items that have come up during the discussion. This will increase the demand on services, so engineering staff have asked for some additional information on servicing, just to confirm that the existing engineering will work for the additional capacities on those pipes. And then the proposed building coverage, and I guess I should have mentioned this earlier when I was talking about changes to the zoning. They have requested 55% lot coverage for the buildings. That's fairly high, and that needs to be justified through stormwater management, because once you start adding in driveways and alike, you're starting to get up a little bit higher. That in and itself can work, but we do have a significant stormwater management facility here. You'll remember a couple of meetings ago, Sifton, their property came forward, and I'll remind you that during that time, they talked about the fact that their stormwater management didn't need to happen, and that stormwater management would be handled through this pond. And so if we're doing all of these changes, we need to make sure that all of the pieces of the puzzle are coming back together properly, so that we're not overburdening that stormwater management facility. So we're asking for some additional information and sort of making sure that all of the pieces are coming together properly. Because when we do look at it, 55 turns into 60, and maybe a little bit more than 60 once you add the driveway, and then you get a deck or a patio in the backyard, and now we're up to maybe 70%. And so that can be okay, provided that the stormwater management report and plans have been put in place to address that. We've spent considerable time with both this application and the one to the north dealing with water balance to ensure that the natural heritage feature, which is not provincially significant, but nonetheless a wetland, that needs a water balance. So we need to make sure that we're not putting too much water into that wetland, and not starving it also. So these are parts of this process that have taken a number of months to go through with the developers, and now that we're making some adjustments, we need to make sure that those pieces are staying together. These kinds of comments I would make for the northern piece as well, but I'll wait until we get there before I dive too deep into that. And then just simply finalizing the plans of subdivision. One of the things that was done here is on the northern edge of this plan of subdivision, when it was originally prepared, there was actually proposing a temporary drive loop or road loop. And the issue with that was that would then need to be removed and made into lots when the second phase come forward. And that was because the second phase wasn't planned yet. Now we have a second phase, so we now know what it's going to look like. And so that interface between doesn't require a temporary roadway, because we know where that roadway will look. And so they've made an adjustment on the plan of subdivision. So a little bit of the northern subdivision is now, and you can see it straight at the very top there. It's an overarching drive loop of the road. That wasn't there before. And now it is a part of this plan of subdivision, and not a part of the northern subdivision. So this will function much better as they move forward with the south piece first, and then the northern piece to follow, or even if they were to come forward at the exact same time, registered at the exact same time, they would both work. And so this is much more functional in that regard. So that was another of the changes. There's comments about provincial policy and official plans alike. That's all found in the report. I won't go through it, but this isn't a plan of subdivision. It is planned to move forward municipally serviced. So this is the information report, and it would, next steps would be to come back with an evaluation report, and the plan of subdivision would go to the county, or the red line revision would go to the county. The zoning bylaw is something that's decided by this council. That was a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions. I was talking some theory there, so happy to give examples if necessary. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Any comments in support of the red line to draft plan? Any comments in opposition? Seeing none. Any comments and questions from members of council? I'm going to ask my question first. I may have one. I'm concerned about the density. It seems rather dense, and I understand you can't look at Mount Bridges separately because it is Strathroy-Caradoc, but just mine as a comment, Mr. Williams, I'm greatly concerned about the density in Mount Bridges, and does it fit with the nature of Mount Bridges? So that's just my comment. Councillor Brennan, you had your hand up, then Councillor Pelkman.
Thank you, Your Worship. In terms of stormwater management and the idea that there's going to be 55% lot coverage and it can creep up to 60 or 65, I'm wondering if there are any things that the developer or the municipality can do in terms of greenscaping the infrastructure in the area to allow more absorbency, more water to be absorbed within the development and maybe reduce the amount of runoff. I guess that question is maybe, I don't know who it's to, it's sort of like to our roads department, but also to the developer and to the individual doing the report. But we hear a lot about greenscaping and stormwater management concerns. I would just say that this is I think it's an opportunity where we as a municipality have to try to get creative here, and if we are going to be addressing stormwater management, and we have, it seems that storms are becoming more intense and more frequent and sometimes more duration, we need to be looking at greenscaping. So I just think this is a great opportunity for us to try and do something about that. I don't know who should be doing it, but when it comes back to us at some point, I'd like to see something that addresses that.
Councillor Pelkman.
Yes, thank you. Just a comment. I do live on a street with 40-foot lots, so it would be a similar street to what I live on. But what I will caution is that there needs to be parking for a minimum of 3 cars per property. Because if there isn't, they end up parking on the street, and that would be a lot of vehicles on the street. For the most part, for the most part, the houses on my street have 2-car driveways and garages, and there are still a significant number of cars parked on the street. So 40-foot lots can work. I don't feel like I'm hemmed in. It's actually the most private backyard I've had living in town now that the trees are mature. However, I do share a concern about increasing the lot coverage to 55% with the 40-foot lots, because if what we hear is correct, builders are now designing homes with the potential for granny suites right in from the get-go to help people finance their housing. So if they're building very large homes on small lots, the propensity for more people and more vehicles in those lots is could be detriment to the community.
Before we ask, we did have one member of the public who wanted to speak. Just ask you to introduce yourself to us.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Marcy. I'm a neighboring resident, and we're a little concerned just with the higher density that's being proposed. It sounds like it is a higher lot coverage as well, and it looks like a comparison of the old plan to this plan, the actual stormwater block hasn't really changed in size. So we would have concerns around stormwater management as well, just given this very high density for single-family homes.
Okay. Thank you, Mercy. Any other, Councillor Wilsey?
I just had a question. I'm not sure which of our staff should speak to it, but on page 10 of the report, there's the engineering and public works portion. There's a part in there that says about adding to the draft plan, for no development, the plan of subdivision may begin until all external infrastructure and services required, and it goes on from there. My question is, I remember on an earlier one that this developer had actually asked to be able to build no connect because they had the permit to take water before we could do Park House. So they would have to do all the dewatering and put their infrastructure in before the municipality could start Park House. So I believe this developer had asked for a permit to build their demo houses or their show houses to start selling while we were doing Park House. And if I read this, this seems like that would not allow them to do that, and they would have to wait until Park House was completely finished and done to our specification before they can build. So I just want to hear a little bit about how that changed and how we got to the clause that we're at now.
We'll maybe start with Mr. Williams. I don't know if Mr. Ortiz can answer that, but one of the two.
I'm happy to start. Thank you, through the mayor. So this is a what I'll call a newer standard clause to address Mount Bridges' capacity situation. So this is designed to put a hold on development in this subdivision if there is no capacity at the time in which they're looking to register the plan of subdivision. That's what this is about. It's the registration of the subdivision, so the no connect building permit for the purposes of model homes and the like, that would be something that would be handled separate from this.
Okay. Follow up, Councillor Wilsey.
And just a quick follow-up, has the developer seen this, and they have any issues with that, or the developers are okay with this clause, or we don't know yet?
Okay. Mr. Williams?
They hadn't provided any comment on it yet. They have seen it because they're part of, they received the report, but this will be something that we will have a conversation after tonight and actually talk through any of the comments that we've heard this evening, including this. Yeah.
Any other comments from members of council? Seeing none, motion to close the public meeting. Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Wilsey, all in favor? Carried. Motion to receive the report for information. Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Wilsey, all in favor? Carried. Public meeting number 4. The public meeting is to consider a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for the Westdale Edgewood subdivision. Motion to open. Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Hippel. All in favor? Carried. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So this is the northern portion of the site that we have been just talking about up to this point. So I can say that this is a plan of subdivision with only single detached dwellings in it. 54 of them are proposed. There's an extension of roads from the southern area and a connection over to the west, which is Sifton's lands. It's the lands that are highlighted in yellow are roughly showing the development extent. There are sections that appear to be green in that area, and I can say with confidence that those areas that are within the woodlands are not being zoned residential, they're being zoned environmental protection. It's just one of the functions of our mapping system. The mapping and line work doesn't necessarily match the photo every single time. The other thing is that there have been adjustments over time with where those zone lines will be finally ending up. So I just wanted to clarify that one piece. This is essentially the pieces of this application. I will say that we have similar comments from the different departments. The same 55% is proposed here as in the south. And we did receive a letter from one of the neighbors concerned about parkland, specifically that the whole of the subdivision is receiving parkland, and that parkland area is found within the southern piece. and there was concern about it not being big enough or appropriate enough. Well, we could certainly look into it a little bit more, but it is meeting the 5% rule that we're allowed to ask for or require as part of the subdivision process, so it's meeting the Planning Act aspect of things. The second piece was relating to concerns about forestry, and the developer in the past had removed trees from woodland area. There was prosecution through the county's woodlands bylaw. The county continues to work or watch that process, but that is with the court. There was direction from the court to have that replanted. They did replant it at one point, but then that was damaged. And as I say, the county continues to monitor the situation with them, and the court has in the past provided extensions to that replanting process, but the county continues to work on that file. Tonight is the statutory public meeting. There may be comments that are received. The report has the policy details, and much like the previous application, a rezoning application is in front of you as a public meeting, and then there is also the plan of subdivision. You would be making the final decision on the zoning, and you would be providing a recommendation to county council, and they will be making the final decision on that front. So those are the pieces for this file. Happy to answer any questions that may be.
Thanks, Tim. Any comments in support of the proposed draft plan of subdivision? Yes, sir. Yep, come on up, identify yourself.
Hi, good evening. My name is Paul Kitson, and I'm with Westdell. I wanted to speak to some of the points that were raised before, as well as the commentary from Tim for phase 2. And we heard some of the comments. Specifically, there were a few comments raised with regards to the size of the lots, us reducing the width of the lots, the site coverage. And just to speak to that a bit more, you know, we did a bit of market analysis, and what came to us was that if we had those size lots and we went out to market, we wouldn't be able to sell the lots. So as such, we had, you know, changed our course and then tried to reduce the size of the lots. There are a few oddly shaped lots that had, if we went with the typical building size, the site coverage would not necessarily fit in those lots. So that's why we had some changes where something was about 55% site coverage. However, that's not the intent for all the lots throughout the subdivision. So if we can work through the process with staff to have the appropriate site coverages, our target was more probably closer to 49%, 50%. The intent was not 55% throughout the entire subdivision. So that's something we can work through staff on. To speak to the point of the concern raised by one of the members of the public with respect to sorry, so just going back to my notes here. So we had stripped with regard to the trees. So we had stripped the topsoil. We had done work on the site to the point where we know if we continue to maintain it, we'll be in trouble. We'll have difficulties maintaining the trees. So our intent was to try to work our way through the subdivision process, then plant the number of trees and maintain it going forward. So I know that concern was raised. There was a court order for us to have a certain number of trees and have the fencing, and that's something that is still our intent. Our hope was to get through that part of the subdivision process and then address that going forward. But there was a bit of a delay just trying to work our way through the conditions. So just wanted to raise those points, and again, open it up to any questions.
Thank you for that. Any comments? Oh, Councilor Brennan, I apologize.
Just one question for the speaker. In trying to replace or to plant the appropriate Carolinian species on the land that was the subject of the court case. Has the developer been working with the local conservation authorities to try and locate some stock which is more mature, larger trees, 2-3 inches across, lots of branches, as opposed to maybe just planting very small trees? I think one of the concerns would be that people, I think, would like to see a substantial planting of trees that are, a few years on in their development, rather than just tiny little things.
Yeah, no, sorry, who you?
Through the,
Go ahead. Yes, and I agree. And we looked at a couple options where there's a trees being planted that's rooted, as well as some stocked. So when it's planted as roots, then the weeds may grow up a bit more. So we are looking at different options, and it's something we are open to doing, for sure. And we do hear the concern, and we want trees that are able to grow properly. So that is our intent.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Are there any comments in opposition? Seeing none. Any other comments and questions from members of council? Councillor Pelkman.
Yes, thank you. Through you to either Mr. Williams or the speaker. Given the boundary of the forest, there's a lot of weird shaped lots and gaps between lots. And when I'm looking at the picture, I see a lot of green space behind the lots. And what I'm worried about is encroachment of people who think they can extend their own lot by encroaching on the green space. And so I'm just wondering what strategies are going to be put in place to ensure that that creepage doesn't take place.
Tim?
Yeah, so through the mayor to Councillor Pelkman, those areas that I'll call them brown, they were former cropland. That is some of the areas that are to be replanted as the court order. And what we would generally see is a fence to be constructed, usually chain link and usually black, usually 5 feet, but we can look into that a little bit further, but just along that boundary line so that it's clear where a lot begins and ends, and where the woodland is.
Councillor Wilsey.
Thank you. At the end of Trillium Place, there's a cul-de-sac and there's a big gap between the two lots. When you look at the site plan, it looks like it's open and it might be part of the environmentally protected area. But when you look at the report, it actually says FD for future development. I just want to see, was future development, is that a carryover from the old picture and the whole lot was future development, or is that area on the cul-de-sac between those two lots, and lots are 18 and 19? Is that actually future development, or is that just a carryover?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wilsey, that's the current zoning. So all of the zones that you see up there are the current zone. So that's just that whole northern block that was essentially the center, and that's where the FD got posted. That would in the future be a part of the environmental protection area. That is the lowest, or one of the lower parts of that woodland area.
Any other questions? Councillor Palmer.
I'm not that familiar with this area, particularly the wooded lot, but I'm just curious whether there are trails or walkways. Is this an area people walk? And if so, where would there sort of be access points for all these new houses that are going to be up where people might want to walk and enjoy the green space?
Through the mayor to the councillor, there's no intention to walk through this area. It's a woodlands, significant woodlands area, and given the replanting and alike, there wouldn't be space left for pathway. The intent here is, and you may remember from the Sifton side, you can see Rougham Road on that location map. there is a path that runs behind those homes and comes out to where Edgewood Lane will connect in, and the intent is that people could walk along that woodland, but the area to the north is too delicate to allow for a path back there. So what will happen is people will come out to Edgewood Lane, be able to walk along Edgewood Lane and potentially connect through John Street and into the existing neighborhood if they wished.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Marcy, you wish to speak to this?
Yeah, I was, just a point of clarification regarding the replanting. Is it proposed behind the homes proposed on Trillium Place where the trees were initially removed? And my other question was just whether the tree replanting, is it gonna be managed through the subdivision as a condition? Or will it be managed outside of the subdivision planning process?
Through the mayor to the two questions. The first question was, I've already forgotten it, sorry, that second question.
Apologies.
The
trees in this area.
Yeah, so the trees are being replanted and that is the case. And then the second question, now I've forgotten that one because I totally lost.
Who's managing the process?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. So the court provided direction. The Woodlands Conservation Officer is monitoring and watching and goes out to the site to confirm the trees are being planted and how they're being planted and that they're making it to the next stage, which is called free growth, I think is the term. Where this fits into the plan of subdivision, I guess we will need to work on the timing. And so if the plants are already in place before registration, that's one thing. If they're planned to be put in after, then we would want to make sure that the plan of subdivision dovetails with it. But that is it is a separate process and has a court order and court decisions. So the two, we can't ignore the two, but they will and we will put whatever conditions are necessary to make sure that the plan of subdivision isn't standing in the way of the replanting, I guess. We're cognizant of both and we'll work to make it happen.
Thank you. Thanks for that answer. Seeing no other questions, motion to close the public meeting. Councilor Brennan, second by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Carried. Motion is that we receive the report. Someone bring the motion. Deputy Mayor, second by Councilor Brennan. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Tim. We'll let you take a break for a while. Approval of minutes. There are 2 minutes to be approved this evening. One is the regular council meeting minutes of October 21st and the Finance Committee meeting minutes of October 15th. Someone, Deputy Mayor, second by Councilor Brennan. Any concerns or questions with the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. There are 2 communications in front of us. Did anyone wish to speak to either one of the 2? Okay, seeing none, motion that the 2 communications be received for information. Deputy Mayor, second by Councilor Wilsey. There are 2 notices of... Oh, I did call it. Did I not call the vote? No. I voted. All in favor? I had my hand up and I voted. I made the check mark. There are 2 notices of motion in front of us, both from Councilor Derbyshire. Councilor Derbyshire, do you wish to bring your motion?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Through you, I will make my motion.
Let everybody depart. Okay.
give you background to this motion.
Can I just ask Councilor Bouchard? We'll make the motion, we'll get it second, and then you can speak, okay? Bring the motion first.
Sure.
Yep.
My motion is to fly only the Canadian flag, the provincial flag, and the municipal flag at municipal flag poles.
Okay. Do you have a seconder for your motion?
Not likely.
Councilor Wilsey, second. You can, go ahead, just following procedure.
So I would like to explain my motion as I guess maybe I didn't present it as I should have through this. On September 3rd, we had a council meeting where it was brought about a proclamation. We were told then that we don't do proclamations, and that proclamation was turned down by a vote of 5-3. At the time, our two senior councilors made the comments that we don't do them. Councillor Pelkman said I don't know if we have a policy in place that states we don't do, but we are not in favor of doing proclamations because they could potentially have more controversial ones, forcing us to make awkward decisions. The next one to speak was Councillor Brennan. He said, in the past, the danger has been that the good intentions of the council for what is to be considered to be a good cause has followed up with ones with group with more controversial requests. I have always been in the mind that we should not make such proclamations. When I heard that, I thought we don't do proclamations. We're told why we don't do proclamations, but we have a flag policy where we do raise flags, but yet our policy states here's the reasons why we don't do them. So my thought process was, when we look at what we're doing, we are actually discriminating against people that come and ask to fly their flag. Now, I know people are going to roll their eyes and they're going to say, oh, that's not right, you can't make that statement. I will give you the example that was given to me by Lori Heyman. She sent a nice email to all of us and said that I was to review the London case with the mayor at the time, Mrs. Haskett. What happened there was they put policies in place where they thought they had covered themselves, and it was that they weren't going to do proclamations on political, religious, sexual, and a bunch of other things. At the time, the Halo group came forward and asked for a proclamation. The mayor said no. Their council voted 13-4 no. They turned it down and they refused to do it. It was taken to the Ontario Human Rights Commission, where they were deemed they were discriminating. They lost and were fined $5,000 each. When I look at this, I'm not against the raising of flags. I'm worried we're putting ourselves in a position where by having these policies that state one group can, as long as you follow these policies, we are discriminating by having that policy there. That doesn't mean that what we're flying is bad. That's not what I've said at all, and I never said to ban anybody's flags. My whole point to this is to try to get my municipality in a spot where we might not be in front of a Human Rights Commission because we've made the same decision that London did by thinking the policy we have in place covers us when maybe it doesn't. So it's not about eliminating anything, and honestly, if anybody would have reached out to me beforehand and spoken about this, there's all kinds of things we can do. You know, there's the event down in the park, the Pride Festival. You know, there's lots of things you can do there. The Boy Scouts have a pole that you know, they take with them camping everywhere and they raise the flag and lower it there. Those are just some ideas that, you know, I threw out, but essentially what I want you to understand is my intention was not to upset and rattle this. I was trying to put our municipality, both our policies, in line with each other, to where if we do nothing, we can always say you can't be told you're discriminating because we do nothing. We're not discriminating because nobody gets to do it. That was my line of thought. That's my kind of way of thinking. So that, I just want to say that, and you know, I do want to say I received numerous emails. I think we all did. I've been called homophobic quite a few times in there with my motion. That was not my intent whatsoever. Online, I also had 2 councillors already voice their opinion as to which way they're voting without hearing or calling or even asking me. So I get it. That's the way things go. But you know, it's kind of weird that you wouldn't make a phone call and say, "Hey, where are you going with this?" But you know, prejudgment's great.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of council? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to ask for the vote. Oh, sorry, Councilor Brennan.
I'd ask this be a recorded vote.
Okay. Okay. Now the motion, sorry, Councilor Wilsey, sorry.
Just a question, and this is through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire. Seeing where this is going, knowing you've already had councillors do it, is this a vote, would you like to keep your motion on the floor, or would you like to withdraw before the vote? As your secondary, I think we can do that if you would like to withdraw it. I'll leave that to you.
No, I'm going to let it stand. I do believe that we need to align ourselves the right way so that we're not putting ourselves in jeopardy of possibly being the next one that is in front of the Human Rights Tribunal. So I think we'll just let it go.
Okay, so we have a motion for a recorded vote. All in favor of we'll start with Deputy Mayor, yes or no?
I vote in the negative.
Councilor Palmer?
Negative, no.
Councilor Derbyshire?
Positive.
Councilor Pelkman? No. Councilor Brennan?
I'm voting no, and I'm exercising the proxy of Councillor Kennis to vote no. He instructed me to do so.
Thank you. Councilor Wilsey?
No.
Councilor Hippel?
No.
I vote no. Okay. Motion is defeated. Councilor Derbyshire, your second motion.
What is my second motion? Oh, yeah. So my second motion is that I would ask the fire department, or the, let me get on here. The Strathroy-Caradoc Fire Service Advisory Committee to look into reports on fire calls, and further, that the reports should consist of the number of full-time calls, the number of volunteer calls, and further, the calls be broken down between emergency calls, fire calls, training activity, and community services activity.
There was, sorry, someone to second motion. Councilor Palmer. Councilor Derbyshire, speak to your motion.
This is something here that if I put it to the Fire Service Committee, thinking that this is something that they should be able to do, but again, I'm not too sure. Maybe this should go to the fire department. I'm not really too sure. What I'm looking for is just a breakdown of where we're at here with our kind of time and what our calls are. I do believe we had a report that said the average volunteer is 750 hours in Strathroy-Caradoc. That works out to 14 and a half hours a week. That's getting to be a part-time job, and to me, I think we need maybe a little more clarity on where these numbers are beginning to come from. So that's why I asked for it.
Any comments, members? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Derbyshire, for bringing the motion. So sitting on that committee, this has been a topic that we addressed at our last meeting. What type of stats this committee would like and what those stats would mean to us. Why would we be asking for these type of stats as opposed to just receiving them with really no purpose? So if I understand your ask of the Fire Services Committee, and first of all, I'll say that I believe your ask is correct to the Fire Services Advisory Committee. So you're asking for the committee to bring back a report, and you can clarify, are you looking for the 2023 year to date, which probably by the time we get the report back to council would almost be the end of the year? Do you want that compared to the 2023 year? And I see the specifics that you're looking at and more clarity as to exactly what each of those categories would represent. So that's the report that you'd be seeking from the advisory committee?
Yes, so what I guess what I want to break down is when we get told there's 1,350 calls, for example, or incidents, can we break this down to whatever, 300 of them are full-time, right? So we kind of know where that budget goes with that. Like full-time, we already know what our cost is. Our volunteer cost is somewhere in all the rest of these calls. So when I say community service activities, like I'm looking at, are we Santa at the fire hall? Is that a pointed event where they get paid? Or is that a activity event that is done by the association for the community? Or are we paying them to do that? Are we paying for turkey bingos? Are we paying training services that you know are over and above what the standard training is? Like somewhere along the line we're getting to 14 and a half hours a week, and they can't all be on call.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Looking at the terms of reference for the Strathroy Fire Service Advisory Committee, and in it, it says the Fire Service Advisory Committee is not responsible for the following: the day-to-day operations of the SCFD, including operational response facilities and programs. My concern is, are we, as a council, asking the Fire Advisory Committee to do something that conflicts with its terms of reference? And should this request more properly come from council and go directly to the administration of the fire department?
Yeah. I don't know, Councillor Wilsey, but Councillor, would you open to a friendly amendment?
Well, I asked it. It was answered by the chair of the committee that said this is a committee thing. So
I was
maybe I'm wrong.
I was gonna cut out the middleman and just ask if we want a friendly amendment and just have staff prepare a report or whatever, who it is, the chief. I think we should get the stats, but cut out the middleman, have it come directly to the council. If you, so I think we should get the report. I'm just trying to find a way to get it to you quicker.
It all depends. I mean, if we're gonna get the same report that says it's 1,300 calls and that we've gotten in the past, then I don't want to feel like I'm berating the chief in here when I start to ask him questions. I thought this was somewhat what the board was supposed to figure out some stuff to help it bring it to council. This isn't giving them direction on where they're going. This is a clarification that if it makes it to the board and the board says, well, this is a good report, we'll move it up, kick it up to council, perfect. If it makes it to the board and they go, well, maybe we'd like to see this broken down a little farther, we have some questions for the chief, or why did this end up where it is? Like I would think this would be an activity that the board should be able to do in the way that I think you're supposed to be helping clarify and get stuff from the chief to council.
Sorry, Councillor, CAO has their finger on the mic.
Point of order.
Yeah, sorry.
It's a fire committee, not a fire board. I think we have to be careful because those are two different creatures.
Okay.
It's a fire committee, not a board.
Thank you, duly noted. CAO?
Thank you. Through your worship, just as staff are going to have to be preparing this in the first place, it won't be the committee putting the numbers together. I would recommend this is something that staff could bring forward directly to council. Certainly we have heard the discussion tonight, and I've made notes in what it is that council's looking for, and we can ensure that the report contains that information that council's looking for.
Yep, go ahead, then we'll call the vote.
Just so you know, the last time we did this numbers thing, it got out of hand and we were told, I was told I was badgering the chief with the numbers. I thought, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know then what your board or committee does, which was unclear when we formulated it. So again, you're not, like, I just can't even fathom what you guys are gonna do now. You're not allowed to look at numbers and help us clarify what they are. Then send it to council. Are we then allowed to ask our questions, or do we then send it to the board? Or the committee, sorry.
Always welcome to ask questions. Councillor Pelkman, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I remember the questions that Councillor Derbyshire brought forward, and there are questions that I think have some validity in terms of just looking at a number of 1,300 calls. What is that? I don't necessarily think that looking at which ones are actually fire calls is the correct way either. But I think it does make it important for us to know that how many times they called to somebody's residence because a CO detector went off. That's still the responsibility of the fire department. It's not a fire call where apparatus is sent out. So I think a little deeper dive into the numbers is warranted, because we all know we're facing that decision. The new fire hall is being built to accommodate it to have full-time firefighters, and I think we need to have a clear understanding of where the numbers lie when we make those decisions.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Wilsey.
I think the report would be good to get, just for the main reason, with talking with some of my other family members who are volunteer firefighters. They have 2 or 3 between their service calls on the trucks and when they do training, they're only out 1 or 2 nights a month with them and their calls. Like, they only spend, from what they're telling me, like between calls and everything, they're only like 10 to 12 hours a month, not 14 a week. And when we're running into issues with retention and getting volunteers and trying to get more people out so that we can maintain our volunteer fire department, I think if we're at 14.5 hours a week, and neighbors in municipalities are that much in a month, I think that's an awful lot to ask from our volunteers. And I just want to make sure their time is being used wisely and efficiently.
Okay. So I go to Deputy Mayor then.
So since the terms of reference have already been spoken about, the terms of reference goes on in item 2 to say that the committee will strive to accomplish its mandate through the following deliverables, and number 1 being that it provides comments upon the request of staff and or council on future potential programs. So what you're talking about, sorry, I lean away from the mic. I guess, what's your definition of programs? It seems that you're asking the committee to look at something and come back with a report to you about the programming, what they're doing from a service delivery program, what they're doing from their volunteer program, because I think that based a lot of the questions that Councillor Derbyshire had initially asked in this call volume number that was floating around back in the day. So I mean, committees are set up to do the heavy lifting, so council doesn't have to do it. So the committee would be doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing in this realm of getting those numbers, putting a report together, and bringing it back to council with perhaps a recommendation or at least a clarification. If it wants to come back to council, that's fine, but I still think that it's within the TOR of the committee.
Okay, I think everybody's spoken who wants, no, I think,
Sorry, I just want, just on this motion before it gets moved over. It's sat here for 2 meetings, and we're now debating whether it should go to this board or this committee or to the direct fire station. Why has nobody said anything before? Hey, you know what? Maybe it shouldn't be here. Maybe this is a fire service thing. Like even, when the CEO says, I think you're right, it should go to the fire department. When you see it and it's submitted, why don't you email and say, well, maybe this isn't where it should be. I think we should change this to this. But instead it sits here. It could be voted down simply based on the fact that it's going to the wrong place. Not that it's a bad motion.
I offered a friendly amendment, Councillor. I offered, if you wanted to change it, to have it go from the fire department directly to council.
But where should it go?
Well, that's what we're gonna decide. Yeah.
But either your board handles this stuff or committee handles it or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then it goes to the fire chief. But who decides that?
We do. We're gonna call the vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, through yourself to perhaps CAO or to yourself. I think Councillor Derbyshire is onto something, because we, if we look at it and think that this motion is going to the wrong place, we're going to vote the motion down. And then what happens? Then does that mean we don't, like he doesn't get the numbers, or council doesn't get numbers, or doesn't get that breakdown? So is there a better way to do this moving forward? I guess I'm just asking that before we vote. Is there a better way to do this moving forward?
CAO.
Through the chair. So when there's a notice of motion that's made on the agenda, the discussion about it has to happen in this room. So it's a notice of motion that's come forward. So I can't call and say to a councillor that's put a notice of motion forward that it should be changed, because it's your notice of motion. That needs to happen, that discussion needs to happen in this room. So in regards to any motion that's on the agenda, there can be a friendly amendment to it. It can be changed by the person who's putting the motion forward. It can be defeated and a new motion can be put forward. So there are different options available to council regarding notice of motions or any motions that are put forward to council.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of Councillor Derbyshire's motion?
I guess, yeah, sure.
Sure, why not? Maybe unanimous. Okay, I don't think it's right.
Passed. Next is financial services, the updated purchasing policy. Motion that the council receive the report on the updated purchasing policy for information. Someone to bring the motion, Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Peltman. All in favor? Director Dakin, you wish to speak to the report?
Thank you, Your Honor. So through to council, what's before you is the updated purchasing policy. So this originally started back in 2023. Was brought forward, sent to a special strategic priorities meeting where it was reviewed in detail, I guess, at that point. A few changes were brought forward from there. The overall aspect of the changes to the policy are really modernizing what's taking place. The old policy spoke to written tenders. We now use a electronic process for submissions and putting our tenders out, as well as there was some corrections made removing the mayor from the corporate credit card program. And then there was one adjustment made for bringing the thresholds for payments in line with what was the new Middlesex County. So that updates have been made and that new policy is in front of you.
Any questions? Councillor Wilsey.
Just as a point of procedure, or at least documentation as we're rolling forward, I had thought earlier this year we had asked that any new policies were coming forward were red line versions. And the reason why that's important is we had our meeting to review this 6 months ago. And we had a very long discussion. A lot of councillors brought up things that we wanted changed. And for me to go through this, there's an awful lot on the meeting tonight, which I won't go into now, but there was an awful lot of information that we got Thursday, and that's only been 3 days ago. So I had to go back and find my notes to May about what was approved and what was not during that meeting to double check that it was within here. If this was a red line version like council had requested for all the new policies coming forward, we've been able to see through that. And when I go through that, I know Councillor Kennedy had made some suggestions, and I know there was suggestions from other councillors. I can't remember exactly what they were, but there was nothing to jog my memory from 6 months ago to make sure that all the suggestions that we had actually made it into this document. So I don't know if I'm all right with this. It seems fine, but every other councillor's members are if everything that they suggested and was agreed to was in there from 6 months ago. Or if we should look for a red line version before we approve this.
Any other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor.
That's actually a really good suggestion, because I was thinking the same thing upon my overread of it. Perhaps a motion to defer this until the next meeting to receive a red line version attached to this document would be appropriate.
Someone to second your motion. Councillor Pammer, any questions on the motion in front of you? Have a motion to defer. Did you give it a time frame, Deputy Mayor?
Shoot to the next meeting, if I suspect that document exists already,
Yep.
Your Worship.
All in favor of the motion? Carried. Next item is 7697 Park House Drive. Motion to receive the report for information. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Hippel. All in favor? Carried. I think this is brief. Director Dakin.
Just a housekeeping item. This property at 7697 Park House Drive removed two farm outbuildings, looks like barns, reducing the assessment by $64,000, resulting in a $218.53 tax credit.
Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, motion to approve the credit. Councillor Derbyshire, second by Councillor Wilsey. All in favor? Opposed, by any? Carried. External auditing services. Motion to receive the report for information. Councillor Pammer, second by Councillor Felkman. All in favor? Carried. Director Dakin.
Thank you. The report before you outlines the procedure that was taking place to go out to RFP for the external auditing services. So on September the 6th, we posted a tender on bids and tenders, and it ran until October the 9th. There were 7 firms that took the tender, 5 submitted bids. The other 5 bids submitted, they're listed in the report. We're recommending, staff's recommending the low bidder of Scrimmager and Company, and their price is listed there. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Felkman.
Could I ask that this motion or this topic be deferred to a later meeting and that we get some further information on the discrepancy between the bids?
You have a seconder, Councillor Brennan. Any questions or comments to Councillor Felkman? Deputy Mayor.
I would just say we need a date to put it to for the deferral.
Date?
I suppose the next sometime in the next 2 meetings.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Councillor Wilsey.
Just a comment to that. I sent an email into the Director of Finance earlier today and just asked him about this auditing company, if he was comfortable with using them, and he told me he was comfortable with using them. Would we like to hear the Director speak to that first before we do the vote for deferral? Just before we're going to defer, maybe the Director has a good reason on why we should pick this company.
Just allow me to consult. Yeah, we have a motion on the floor, so we'll take the vote on the motion to defer. All in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any? Carried. Next is the bush truck lease, motion to receive the report for information. Councillor Hippel, second by Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you, Chair, through to Council. So before you is a report, just updating a request from the Fire Department to, instead of replacing, replacing FTO Vehicle 1 with a push truck, and it would be through a lease through our facility set up with Enterprise Fleet Management. Some of the reasons that was listed by the Fire Department and staff within the Finance Department is moving some of these vehicles that are eligible, I would say, because of their service into a lease as opposed to an outright purchase was one of the things that came up. As well as the need for a vehicle of this nature due to a lot of the grass fires and crop fires that they deal with. There's been ongoing damage to fire equipment such as hoses and stuff, running them through the fields and the stubble and stuff, causing damage. So this would allow the fire department to have a vehicle that is four-wheel drive that could go right to the scene of the fire and get an attack going sooner. There was $75,000 set aside out of the fleet reserve to purchase this vehicle. That would stay within the fleet reserve currently, and we would just move this into a lease. And then there was an outline within the report of how they rotate the vehicles through the different departments to address this. As well, I do have District Captain Bernard with us if there's questions specifically about the fire equipment. I'll leave it at that if there's questions.
Any questions? Councillor Wilsey.
With this changing from a one-year capital expense to a 5-year operational expense, and starting in 2025, because we didn't approve it in 2024, should this not be a budget discussion? I would just think that it should be a budget discussion. Maybe we should move it to the budget meeting and talk about it for next year rather than pre-approving it for a 5-year expense.
Is that a motion? Did you bring a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that a motion that we refer this to the budget committee when the fire department presents their 2025 budget.
You have a seconder. Councillor Derbyshire. Just one question I want to ask. Is this time sensitive? Are we going to lose any advantage by deferring this, Director?
Through the chair to the chair, my understanding is that this is a request that's been brought forward based on the fact that the vehicle's already in production. So we would have to look at whatever that production schedule is, and if there's other vehicles within that same line that could be picked up. But my understanding is that this vehicle is currently available and could be brought into 25. But I'm not sure as to if there's any others with that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Derbyshire, then the Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor can go ahead if he wants.
Oh, thank you, Councillor, if you don't mind.
Yeah, he yielded his time.
Well, yes, it's very generous. I see our District Chief, Bedard, is here. Do you have any information from Chief Smith as to whether this is time sensitive?
As far as being time sensitive, I'm not gonna say yes or no. We are able to take delivery of this vehicle in January. We would like to have the vehicle before the grass fire season starts, which usually is March. So training all has to be done on that vehicle in that time period before the grass fire season starts. As you're all well aware, we do have a lot of significant grass fires throughout the early season. This year was a weird one because we had really wet weather. But it is very labor intensive fire and depletes our resources greatly. So we're unable to respond anywhere else because everybody is at that grass fire. But as far as time sensitive, I wouldn't want to say yes or no.
Councillor Derbyshire, then Councillor Falkman.
Thank you. So I guess I am going to ask about the equipment. So is it a gas truck we're going with?
Yes.
Okay, so most people don't allow gas vehicles in their field because they do emit sparks out the back end, which could cause a fire. So that would seem somewhat counterproductive for me. The other thing is, are we dual rear wheels?
No, single.
So we're single rear wheels. Okay.
Dual rear wheels will get stuck easier.
Yes, that was gonna be one of my points. And we're running it's gonna be a solid hose reel off the back?
So it'll be 1 inch hose reel as well as 1 3/4 tack lines.
Tack lines.
Yeah.
Perfect. So my next question would be, how often are we stuck with tankers that can go out into the field?
We don't bring any apparatus in the field.
Is because we think they're gonna get stuck?
That is a mandate from the fire chief that we don't bring any $1 million trucks out into the field. They're not off-road vehicles, so we do not take them off-road.
Okay, so I will say that has changed since I was there.
Yeah, it's been like that for quite some time.
Because
like everybody knows how much a fire truck costs. You get one stuck in the field and you start pulling on it, that's a $1.5 million truck to replace if you bend it.
Your mic's still on, Councillor. You didn't go to Councillor Falkman.
Yes, thank you. This is where my lifetime of living in an urban environment is going to come through in my ignorance of what it's like to be out in the country. So when I'm driving around and I see that a lot of fields have space for a vehicle, probably a four-wheeler, to drive around, if you're going to a grass field, how rough is that terrain compared to a farm field?
So a lot of the ones that we're responding to, they're brush fires that have got out of control. So adjacent to wherever that brush pile is that's on fire is probably corn stubble or a bean field. So at any given time, because there's a lot of no-till anymore, it is relatively rough. Right now, we're using our own vehicles for that purpose. We're driving our own vehicles in the field to fight these fires and bring the people out to the fire. So this vehicle would potentially help us get there quicker to keep that fire smaller.
One follow-up question. How long does 300 gallons last you?
Well, the 300 gallons mixed with foam is actually 3,000 gallons. So whatever, take 1 gallon of water, mix it with foam, that multiplies your extinguishing ability by 10.
Okay. Councillor Derby, you had your hand up there, Councillor.
I did. It's pointless.
Any other, okay, there is a second, oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, do we not have 4x4 trucks already?
So the
And they don't go
4x4
in
trucks
either?
that we do have,
Yeah.
they don't carry any water. They're
No,
sport
but-
vehicles.
When we talk about using our personal vehicles to take all these people back, don't we have 4x4 pickup trucks that the fire
Problem with
department?
that is manpower. A lot of times those trucks are the last ones to leave the hall because they don't carry water.
But then why are your personal vehicles there? You should be to the station to get that truck.
Okay. So we have a second motion to defer this. All in favor of deferring? Opposed, if any? Pardon me? It's defeated. Someone wish to bring another motion? Deputy Mayor.
1 second, I just gotta pull up the report.
Yep.
Before we get another motion, where will this vehicle be housed?
Mount Bridges Station right in the middle of the municipality.
So it's going to
So
Mount.
it will respond to the whole municipality.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
You've already had the motion to accept the report, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is
So
last
I'll
motion.
continue with that council approve the lease of the bush truck and the internal transfer of the vehicles with the station to accommodate the replacement of FPO1 vehicle.
Okay, you have a seconder, Councillor Hippel. Any questions? Councillor Wilsey.
So I was gonna bring this forward at the next meeting, or the budget meeting if we deferred it, but this report, when it comes forward, is just including the cost of the lease. The procurement policy that we're bringing back has a section where we need to look at the full cost of a vehicle, including all of the maintenance and everything before we approve anything or purchase anything. So if we go ahead and we approve this tonight, we're approving it just on the cost of the lease. We are not looking at the cost of what it's gonna cost to maintain another apparatus for the truck. Realize it's new, so there might not be a lot, but it's a fire apparatus. There's gonna be increased maintenance on that. There's the pump, there's the foam, there's the mixer, there's all of that that's gonna need maintenance and everything all the way through. Beyond that, we haven't figured out what our budget yet is gonna be for 2025. And if we approve this truck tonight, we are approving a $25,000 increase to the next 5 budgets. So we're approving this, again, this seems to be a habit in the fall before budget season. We start approving things a few months before the budget. I don't think that's something we should do. But if that's the decision council wants to take, I guess I'm voting.
Any other comments? Derbyshire.
Thank you. I know this has been a wet year, so we will say that, 9 incidents is down, but we actually are trending down if you look at the way it's going, 19, 12, 9. Maybe we should be more on the fire prevention side of things and get it out farther, that we don't leave fires on the windiest day possible, it's, we're putting an awful lot into 12, and I'm gonna say incidents. Some of them might be fire equipment, some's grass fire, some's in the ditch. It's an awful lot that we're putting into this for 12 incidents. Again, when we begin to look at budgets and the amount of money being spent here, there, and everywhere, I know nobody wants to tighten up their button, but we're going to have to do it at some point here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Palmer.
It feels like, for me, this would be a really good thing to have taken to the committee, where you guys could have deep dived a little bit, answer some of the questions that are coming up, look at more like what are the other costs involved with the lease, and come back with a recommendation. I feel like, going back to Councillor Derbyshire's earlier comments, like what is the committee for? It seems like that this would have been a good exercise for the committee. I would have liked to have seen it go to the committee and come back with some of these questions answered, with you guys having some time to deep dive a little bit more into how many fires, what's the trend, what's the equipment, all these things that we're talking about now. I think it's kind of unfortunate that it's here now and that it didn't go, because I think this would have been a good exercise for you. That's just a comment.
Okay. Any other comments? I have a second motion. All in favor of the Deputy Mayor's motion? Okay, opposed? Okay, motion is carried. Building and planning recommendation, this is the deal with BBP-2024-123 regarding rezoning application. Motion to receive the report for information. Councillor Derbyshire, second by Councillor Pelkman. All in favor? Carried. Mr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, this is a hold removal application. Once certain specific conditions have been met, a hold can be removed. In this particular case, the hold removal is as a result of the finalizing of a plan of subdivision for the 5th phase of this South Grove Meadows subdivision. This is the final phase of that subdivision, and the hold removal is coming after this plan of subdivisions agreement has been registered on title.
Any questions of Mr. Williams? Okay. Seeing none, there are two motions of the report regarding rezoning application. ZBA, sorry, already received it, I apologize. Motion that bylaw number 108-24 be referred to the consideration of bylaws section of the agenda for consideration and approval. And the motion, Councillor Hippel, second by Councillor Derbyshire. All in favor? Carried. Community Services, motion to receive the report regarding the investment grade audit. Councillor Brennan, I see a hand there, second by Councillor Pammer. All in favor? Director Littleborn.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report for you this evening is simply seeking Council's approval to enter into an agreement with Johnson Controls Incorporated through the canoe procurement process, as well as allocating $25,000 from the Asset Management Reserve Fund to conduct an investment grade audit for this audit that we want to go through with Johnson Controls. Sorry. In 2023, Johnson Controls conducted a preliminary audit of our facilities, identified a number of areas in which there could be significant energy savings. They looked at facilities like West Middlesex Memorial Center, Town Hall, Gemini, the police station, and did identify some capital improvements that would reduce our operational costs. The unique item with regards to this process is it provides us another way of financing our capital projects. So these projects would be financed through the savings that are found within regards to the energy. Now, partnering with Johnson Controls is they're unique to many of the organizations that do this, energy performance contracts, is Johnson Controls will guarantee the savings based on their energy analysis. So if we're not meeting the energy analysis that they identified, the savings are guaranteed through Johnson Controls. This phase of the project is just to do the audit. If council finds, when the audit comes back and council finds that there isn't enough savings to be had, council can opt out of the program at any point in time. This is not committing council to go and start doing all kinds of renovations at different facilities throughout the municipality. This is purely to do the energy audit that's going to identify those pieces of equipment that would provide us with a significant energy reduction, as well as renew our capital. As many of you are aware, the Gemini Sportsplex is 25 years old. Many items have a 25-year life expectancy from the time you initially install them. Plus, the West Middlesex Memorial Center is 75 years old. This building is much older than 75 years. So we have an aging infrastructure. So this is just a unique way of funding some of those capital replacements. But first step is we need to do the energy audit.
Again, I open up questions, but I have one. I apologize, Director Littleborn. I did not get a chance to ask this. I don't mean to jump on this one. Tri-Township Arena, I know it's a separate entity, but I think given the fact that we're trying to keep the building open, could we add I know it's going to be added cost, but could we add Tri-Township Arena to the list of buildings to look at?
I would have to speak with Johnson Controls. The number they give us for the grant was identified based on the buildings that they identified. Doesn't mean we can't look at Tri-Township Arena. Either we include it into this go around or we do another approach. If I remember back to Tri-Township Arena, they've done a significant number of upgrades already with regards to dehumidification, going from natural gas to an electric dehumidification, They've got some newer HVAC units, but we can always look at including them into the scope.
Any other questions? Councillor Wilsey.
I remember that presentation, there's a couple things. I know since then, we've already done a lot of capital improvements, or we've put them in the budget to upgrade all of these facilities. If we look at the police station, that's in our budget for next year for a complete renovation. So why would we talk about retrofitting old parts of a building we're looking at upgrading? They're not gonna put that through another contractor to put them in. We're already talking about changing the evaporators at the Gemini. That was something that was brought up in the capital budget when we talked about that just recently. All of these upgrades that the director had just mentioned, we already have the works in the capital. So if they're gonna do a study, but we were told we can't let these upgrades wait, then they're gonna have to be removed out of that, which is gonna be part of the study. If we're already doing it, it doesn't really make sense. The other part is when I listened to the presentation, just with a little bit of math on the future value of money and the interest rate and where everything's go up with inflation. If we look at what we're going to pay and then what we're going to pay and then pay back by our energy savings, we actually end up as a municipality losing money because we've put that money forward and then it's a loan that's going to be on interest. And even though it's paid back with the energy savings, we may be prematurely replacing things that aren't at their useful end of life just because it meets done their study to pay it back. And then by the time it gets all paid back, we're ready to replace them again. And we really aren't any farther ahead than we were when we started, except we're 10 years on. So with all of that, I don't think this proposal really makes a lot of sense. Like it sounds good because it sounds like it's free money, but it's not really free money. But when you do the math, it's actually net zero, or it costs us money. The other part that we want to keep in mind is that if we look at the purchasing policy that was previous on there, if we were to look at section 5.8, it says that if a contractor does the audit or the design work for a project, they're not allowed to bill on the work. So if we were to do this, we would not be able, even if they did this and we passed our new purchasing policy, we would not be able to give the contract, which Johnson would require to be paid, to them to do the work because of our purchasing policy. So we can't really go forward with the program anyways. Just a few thoughts for council.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Palmer.
I can't remember if during the initial presentation they gave examples of other municipalities who had done this program, and I'm just wondering if you had the opportunity, Director, to speak with any of them or to get some feedback onto how the process worked.
Through the chair to Councillor Palmer, I have not. This is from what I understand, is not new. To begin with, this type of financing has occurred for many, many years. I remember I've been here for 12 years, and I want to say a company called Amoresco approached us to do a very similar approach. At that time, we didn't find our capital infrastructure wasn't as in a poor position as we are today, because that was 10 or 12 years ago. With regards to the items that are that have been identified as the huge energy savers is the gas consumption, so getting off of natural gas because we're paying the carbon tax, and the carbon tax will continue to go up. Yes, could this end up costing the municipality more money? What it does is it frees up money at the beginning, so we're not actually outlaying any initial cash to start out, where the payment is paid back over a period of years through the energy savings. With regards to the items that have been identified through through Johnson's Controls initial small-scale energy audit, are those due to be replaced? Yes. Are they critically to be replaced in the next number of years? I would say yes. Were they identified in a grant to go forward? Yes. Will we be successful in obtaining that grant? I'm going to say we probably have about a 25% chance of obtaining that grant because we don't have the audit to go along to substantiate the energy savings that would justify the awarding of the grant. So there's lots of things, moving parts that need to take place. Johnson Controls is very confident that they would be successful in obtaining the grant through FCM. They write these apparently a number of them every year and have been very successful. So the cost to do $125,000 grant would be $25,000 to the municipality. So,
any other, Councilor Derbyshire?
Sorry, I'm a little confused on the grants and what we went for. So in September, we had to have a list in very quickly of what we wanted to do with different arenas. Was that stuff on some of this stuff? Like, are we overlapping grants at this point, I guess is what I'm asking.
So we applied for two grants. One was the Community Sport Recreation Infrastructure Fund, which we feel we have a good possibility of being successful at that grant. I need to back up because I was just checking something. We never apply for the GICB grant because we don't have a RET scan or RET screening done, which is a renewable energy tracking screening. We don't have that program. This energy audit would actually give us that. So what we didn't want to do was submit a grant and falsify a bunch of stuff, because that in the eyes of those that are reviewing our grants, it would make us look bad. So we would rather hold off on that than spend the staff time to go ahead and proceed. And when staff presented the two grants to council back in the strategic priorities meeting, we didn't have that information when we presented that to council. We didn't have the know that we needed to have that type of information available. To answer your question, Councillor Derbyshire, are we overlapping grants? This grant has nothing to do with the purchase of equipment. This grant has only to do with conducting an energy audit, so we're in better position to, if further grants come forward, but also to be able to fund new infrastructure through the energy savings that we would obtain through installing new equipment. And a perfect example for you would be the dehumidifiers at the Gemini Sportsplex. The dehumidifiers at the Gemini Sportsplex are currently rooftop units. They utilize a gas burner to dry the desiccant wheel. We would no longer be using rooftop desiccant units. We would go to an internal unit, which means it's housed inside the facility, and they would use an electric element to dry the desiccant wheel. So we're no longer consuming large amounts of natural gas, having to pay the carbon tax on top of that consumption. We would be going to an electric unit, which it cleans burner, so it's better for the environment, for the greenhouse gases and our carbon footprint, and it doesn't have the carbon tax attached to those electric units.
Okay, and just one more, then with Councillor Palmer, then we'll bring it to a vote.
So if I'm reading this correctly, we will have to enter an agreement with Johnson Controls for the price of the audit, which is $125,000, before we know whether or not we're going to get a $100,000 grant.
It's 25, right?
$125,000 is the cost of the audit.
No.
Yes.
Through the chair, we would have to enter into an agreement for Johnson Controls for a $125,000 audit. We would be required to pay them $25,000 if they were successful in receiving the $100,000 grant. In the report, if staff have identified under the financial implications, if we are unsuccessful in receiving the grant, staff would have to come back to council for further direction.
But wouldn't we already be obligated because we've signed a contract? That would be my concern. Essentially, we'd be on the hook for the 125. Is that not correct? Sorry, is that not correct?
I would have to follow up with Johnson Controls. You may very well be correct, Councillor Palmer.
Okay, you talked to someone want to bring a motion one way or the other. Councillor Wilsey.
I'd like to bring the motion that council deny staff procure an agreement with Johnson Controls through canoe procurement with the intent of retrofitting the municipality's facilities, including the Gemini Sportsplex, West Middlesex Memorial Arena, municipal offices, and the Strathroy-Caradoc Police Station. and further that council deny allocating $25,000 from the Asset Management Reserve Fund to conduct the investment grade audit.
Do you have a seconder?
Could it be read back one more time, please? There was a lot there.
Sure, he just added deny into the one.
Okay,
I'm just reading what was.
It's just the same one, okay.
Yeah, I just read the one there, I just choose.
Just making sure you had the page.
Didn't change anything, I
It's
just.
the same one.
Same one as there, I just said deny.
We got one thing on the floor here. Did you get a seconder, Councillor Wilsey?
No, just a question.
Okay, I will second your motion. Discussion on the motion to deny. Councillor Pelkman.
Would it be possible to get clarification on Councillor Palmer's question before we make a decision on this?
Okay.
So that would be to defer it to get further information.
So there's a motion in front of us to deny. Deputy Mayor.
I'll make a motion to defer. I can't.
Just did.
Oh, you did?
I didn't make a motion.
You said, should we? And
I was just asking the question that
right.
before we vote on this issue to deny or approve.
Or defer. We have to do with the motion on the floor.
Can we get an answer? I'm asking the question if we can get an answer from Johnson Controls on Councillor Palmer's question.
Yeah, we have one motion on the floor.
I know, but I think I can make a motion to defer on top of that motion.
Yes, you can.
I thought so. So I will make a motion to defer until the next meeting of council so that Director of Recreation can receive an answer to Councillor Palmer's question and bring it back to council.
Okay, you have the seconder. Councillor Brennan, all in favor of that motion?
What happens when I'm eating candy?
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Engineering Public Works, motion to receive the report regarding the water, wastewater, and stormwater master plan for information. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? Carried. Director Ortiz, speak to the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm excited to present the 2024 Water, Wastewater, and Stormwater Master Plan and the associated staff report with Council today. The master plan is accompanied with a tremendous amount of effort from both staff and the municipality's consultant, R.B. Anderson and Associates. And it marks a significant milestone in the municipality's long-term ability to continue to enable growth in the community. The master plan outlines $102 million of investment in infrastructure over 20 years. I should caution that the master plan isn't intended to be a single silver bullet to address all the water, wastewater challenges in the municipality, but it's one of a number of tools that help shape and guide the water, wastewater development in the municipality. I'm joined tonight by Mr. John Terrell of RVA, who will be walking council through the project history and report highlights, and we would be happy to answer any questions after the presentation.
Excuse me, podium's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll be addressing the slide deck that was part of the council package. In case you want to go into much more detail, the whole master plan was included in the package, so you can read through that at your leisure or your peril. So what we wanted to do is just go through the highlights and really just want to provide you with the details on the water, wastewater, and stormwater master plan, as well as the pollution prevention control plan that RVA undertook for the municipality. We want to summarize the recommendations and costs we came up with and give you some context. And I'm sure Director Ortiz will jump in as needed if he feels more clarification is needed to anything I'm talking about. So just briefly on the background and the schedule, we started this in April of last year. We undertook background reviews, site visits. We had flow monitoring and hydrant testing done on the water system and the wastewater system. We did hydraulic modeling. We had a preliminary PIC in January in Mount Bridges, where we introduced the project to the public. and subject to further analysis and some direction from staff and council, we concluded in the PIC number 2 held on September 11th, where we gave an outline of the recommendations that are essentially the same recommendations that have been put forward tonight for your review. Following this review, and if we receive this document, the master plan process can be put on the public record, issued a notice of completion, and then that and the pollution prevention control stay on there for 30 days, and then essentially after that, the system is ready to go and you can proceed. So the next slide, please. So what we are doing with the master plan is we're undertaking phases 1 and 2 of the municipal class environmental assessment process. It's a five-stage process, and we follow the first 2 phases of it to look at various options for servicing in the future. The intent here is to address the servicing needs due to growth, and not necessarily to manage existing assets. However, if we do come across things that we see, we certainly have included them and noted them as we went forward. Next slide, please. So at the beginning of the process, in stage 1 of the class environmental assessment process, you have to sort of state your problem and opportunity statement, which for this master plan and pollution prevention control plan was to identify the preferred water, wastewater servicing strategies to meet the municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc's growth needs in 2046, as well as provide effective ongoing continuity to existing service community areas across the municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc as appropriate. And again, the pollution prevention plan is intended to be part of the municipality's ongoing efforts to protect the environment through monitoring and improving, if required, the performance of its sanitary and storm sewer infrastructure. And just as a note, this master plan focused on the 2 urban settlement areas, Strathroy and Mount Bridges. Next slide, please. We'll look at the water distribution system first. So both the Strathroy and Mount Bridges water distribution systems are supplied from the Lake Huron primary water supply system through separate connections. The Lake Huron primary water supply system has a capacity of 340 million liters a day, and its 2023 maximum flow rate was just less than 200 million liters a day. So essentially, the supply is not an issue. The municipality can, for all intents and purposes, grow with a secure water supply. The findings in terms of the demand for the net to 2046 can be passed on by the municipality to the primary water supply, as they are right now doing their own master plan and planning out in roughly the same period as you are right now. So water supply is not an issue. Water storage, again, if you've got really good eyes, the graph to the right has a couple of lines on it, but essentially what it's showing is that there's in terms of storage, there's a lot of storage, more storage than is required for water in Strathroy, but in Mount Bridges, the current amount of storage is required to be upgraded around, I think, 2032. Other findings that we did when we looked at the water storage, pumping, and we did modeling, and we tested the water distribution system in both Strathroy and Mount Bridges for the anticipated conditions between now and 2046. And with regard to the Strathroy drinking water system, we really found no major issues related to growth. One thing that we did find is next slide, please. Sorry, I'm on the next slide there. We did find that there were 9 sections of undersized water main in the distribution system that needed to be upsized to meet fire flow targets. So these are generally in the older areas of the city or in areas where there are cul-de-sacs. So we've identified 9 sections for that. With regard to Mount Bridges, there were 2 issues identified. Currently, there's a 2,350 cubic meters of storage. By 2046, you'll need a total of 3,913 cubic meters of storage, and around 2031-32 is when you'll exceed the current 2,350 storage. So we're gonna look at a solution to provide additional storage to Mount Bridges for water. The other thing we noted is that there were some isolated rural areas that are supplied by water from Mount Bridges that have lower than required fire flows under current and future scenarios. Next slide, please. So we recommended upsizing the 9 sections of water main between 2025 and 2035 in Strathroy. We also looked at providing additional storage tanks at the current Mount Bridges reservoir facility, which is off of Glendon Road. Basically, our preferred solution, we looked at both in-ground storage and above-ground storage tanks, and we recommend using above-ground storage tanks basically because that should provide more flexibility at a lower cost for future growth. And with the shape of the property there, you can always put a 3rd tank on the site and or grow the two existing tanks upwards. So there's more room for storage post 2046. With regard to those areas east of Adelaide Road and Gibson that had fire flow issues, one option would be to put bigger water mains down there. The problem when you put bigger water mains down there is for the potential of a fire that may or may not happen in 20 or 50 years. You end up having water quality issues because you have stagnant water just sitting in the pipes that municipality will have to flush on a regular basis. So we would recommend that those areas be treated as rural areas in terms of fire protection, and rather than assuming that the hydrants there would provide service. Next slide, please. So with regard to the Strathroy wastewater treatment collection system, basically the population in Strathroy is going to expand from 18,000 to around 24,000 by 2046, and the average day demand is going to go from 5,400 cubic meters a day to 7,000 cubic meters a day over that same period. So looking at the collection system through our modeling, looking at the pump stations, forest mains, and sewers, they are adequate for the future flows projected in Strathroy. The wastewater treatment facility does have an existing capacity of 10,000 cubic meters a day, which is greater than the 7,000 forecast in 2046. So there's no requirement to expand it for capacity up to the 2046 period. Next slide, please. Mount Bridges, the wastewater collection system, again, the same sort of analysis was undertaken. There's approximately 2,000 people connected to the system right now, and by by 2046, we're looking at connecting both the existing population that's not connected and the growth, so that brings up to 7,500 people. So the capacity that we're looking at for 2046 horizon is 2,348 cubic meters a day. Based on our review of the collection system as it stands now is adequate for the currently connected areas and will be okay till 2046. For providing the collection system for current users on the existing roads, we're looking at about 11.6 kilometers of new sanitary sewers being required. The cost of providing that is, again, if you've taken a look at the master plan, we can talk about that in a few minutes, but if you just, next slide there, please. So as I think we all know, the wastewater treatment facility is currently struggling to meet its current demands. There are steps that the municipality is taking to address that. And certainly one of the assumptions in our planning of the master plan was that the treatment capacity will be restored to the 825 cubic meters a day that is currently on the approvals for it, and that's the basis of expanding it from where it is right now at 825 to 2348. The expansion will require a Schedule C class environmental assessment to confirm what the strategy would be to handle that growth in for the municipality. So the next slide, this goes back to the collection system, and what you see up there, that's just a picture from the current Strathroy-Caradoc servicing standards, and that's what a typical road right-of-way would look like, or what you would tell a new developer, okay, you've got a 20-meter road allowance, this is what it's going to look like. So we looked at the costing of providing something like that. We also looked at the options of just not in Mount Bridges, just providing just the sewer, the storm sewer and the sanitary sewer and the surface work. So that was the basis of our pricing. What will happen, I think, when you're looking at connecting the existing populations, staff will have to do an in-depth analysis to confirm what makes the most sense, and it might be on a street-by-street basis, it might be up for the community as a whole, with regard to do you want to have everything as to the current Strathroy-Caradoc standard? Do you want to include sidewalks? Do you need to include curb? Certainly the only thing I would caution is when you do put a sewer in the ground, it's about 10 to 12 feet deep, 3 feet wide at the bottom where you're putting the sewer in. You have to assume that the first 4 feet you can go up straight, so the next 8 feet go up at a 1-to-1 slope. So that's 8 plus 3 plus 8, so you're looking at about a 20-foot hole to put your sewer in on any given street. So by the time you've dug up that big a hole, and you potentially could reduce it by using a trench box, but it's still going to be a significant hole in the ground, and then you have to connect each property from the side into it. So a lot of times that's the thing staff will have to advise you on if you're putting all this together, what makes the most sense. And what we've done, and you'll see when we're talking about costing, we've given you a conservative approach to this. I prefer to have you curse my name because I told you it was too much than me to trying to give you good news now that it's less, and then you find 10 years from now it's what I said I should have said. So that's just something to think about going forward. And if you have time to read through the master plan, you can take a look at that and certainly approach staff if you have any questions. So the next slide, please. So in terms of expanding the treatment capacity for Mount Bridges, there were three options that, high-level options that we've listed here that can be explored as part of the class environmental assessment. One is upgrading the Mount Bridges wastewater treatment facility from 825 to 2348. Another option is to upgrade the main sewage pumping station and then pump it by force main up to the Strathroy wastewater plant. That's a lot of force main, and we'll be going through a bit of this of the Strathroy collection system. You'll probably have to do upgrades to a pumping station there, and possibly trunk sewers and force mains. Or the third option would be to potentially build a new wastewater treatment facility altogether, decommission the existing one, and then pump the flows from the main pumping station to that new facility. So those are the three options, and as a basis, when you're looking at the costing, in the master plan document, we did break down the three costing high-level cost estimates, but for costing, you'll see we kept in the option of expanding the wastewater plant as the base option, at least now, to get us to that $102 million number that Director Ortiz mentioned. Next slide, please. Stormwater management. Basically, the municipality has 11 swim facilities. That's stormwater management. Everybody says swim, it's a shorter version of it. Swim facilities, 10 of which are included in the MEC environmental compliance approval that the municipality has, and the 11th I found by just looking around. So what we did is we took a look at the municipality's policy, standards, and development agreements, capital budget, and asset management master plan, and we reviewed and noted gaps in certain aspects of the current subdivision agreement and the site plan agreement and the current standards, and just sort of the master plan document for the stormwater sort of shows you where those are and suggests some best management practices. The other thing we also looked at was the current 10-year capital plan, and looking at what the amount is to be spent on the refurbishment, maintenance, and management of swim facilities. It looked like there was underfunding, so we recommended a more robust stormwater management program. 3 stages: 1 to review and confirm an overall stormwater management policy. Understanding that you've already got a separate rate policy for stormwater management, so I think this is you've got the financing on one side. I think on this side it is, helping with the management. Then the second stage would be to update procedures for facility assessments and assumptions from development. And then the third would be to implement life cycle management of the existing 11 stormwater facilities that we currently have. Next slide, please. So the pollution prevention plan, again, it's a document that the Ministry of the Environment usually insists that municipalities have to sort of look at addressing issues where there are potential overflows of sewage in the environment. So what we looked at doing was reviewing historical data, and we only found minor bypasses at the 2 wastewater treatment facilities, and these were not necessarily connected to systemic issues caused by wet weather. Particularly in Mount Bridges, any bypasses were basically the result of the issues with the current wastewater treatment facility, which are being addressed. So we had straightforward recommendations. If municipality in any of the work finds cross connections between the sanitary and storm sewer when they're doing any municipal work, they should address them through separation. And then also we have recommendations for upgrading the sanitary hydraulic model as part of the wastewater component. We've also thought that that could also be used to help build and monitor the pollution prevention plan aspects too. And that's about it. So the next thing is the cost opinion, and just we'll go through the cost opinion and how it was derived. There's an AS, and we used a standard costing tool, and which has 5 classes, and the highest class is class 5, which means, you know, we defined we're sort of at this very high level view. It's like a 0 to 2% completion rate. So we consider whatever we're telling you to be around -30 to +50% in terms of accuracy. With linear construction, we base that on data from 2023 linear construction work in Strathroy-Caradoc and the projects that were tendered. Any water, wastewater facility studies we based on recent projects in Ontario. Stormwater management restoration costs are based on review of public tenders throughout Ontario in the last few years. Modeling costs that we provided would include some additional field work to confirm systems and adding to the information every time developments join the system. It's an opportunity to put that information into the models for water and wastewater to keep them up to date. When we're looking at our costing, we're just presenting, as I said, growth figures for the projects that we've identified, but how they're actually carried out is not just in isolation. Again, these municipal staff will have to review and advise council through considering what we've said in the context of the current 10-year capital plan, your asset management plan, other, you know, community policy studies and initiatives, and also your financial capacity to deal with it as well. And one big note is that there are current works being undertaken at Strathroy and Mount Bridges wastewater treatment facilities, and the costs that are presented do not include any of these costs because they're not related to growth. So the last page, you know, is the one where we've provided costing for options. Water costing over the period of 2046, we've estimated to be around $50 million, and that includes fixing the water mains in the areas with fire flow issues, the storage upgrades at Mount Bridges, and periodic updating of the water hydraulic model. The wastewater system costing we've estimated, again, it's the biggest number, about 81 million. There's the Schedule C class environmental assessment for the Mount Bridges wastewater treatment facility. There's the cost, which again we've based on the expansion of the existing plant. Again, I'd refer you to the master plan document where we've provided costing, a very high level costing for the other options and other considerations. The existing servicing of the collection system in Mount Bridges, we've estimated at 54 million. Now that includes full restoration, storm sewers and sanitary. Again, that cost may come down if, you know, the municipality and staff review and determine what needs to be done on you know, overall or particular run of pipe. And then the costing for the updated wastewater hydraulic model. The stormwater management over implementing the new policies and the maintenance procedures and refurbishment over 20 years, we've estimated about $6.2 million. And then the pollution prevention plan, collection plan, really that's just adding additional modeling and investigation on top of the wastewater modeling, and we've estimated that over 20 years at about $300,000. So the total comes out to $208,000. And that is a race through the master plan.
It was a scary race.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Wilsey.
Got one for the chair and the CAO, and then a couple other. Is this our only chance to ask questions about the master plan? I realize it's almost 600 pages, and we've only had it for 3 days. Is this our only chance to ask questions about it, or will we be having another meeting where we can do more reading and ask more detailed questions? I guess that's my first question.
Fair question. CAO.
Through the chair, there is a recommendation tonight for council to endorse the plan so that staff can move forward for the notice of completion, but we're looking for direction from council.
If that's the case, instead of just council's 2 questions, I actually have 4 top ones that I've got. Are we able to ask all of those?
Important plan, go ahead, Councillor, ask them all at once.
All right. First one, they kind of jump around a little bit, is with option 3 of the proposed Mount Bridges, where we looked at a new wastewater plant. Why did we pick an area where we needed a force main instead of going to a lower elevation area that would have been east of Mount Bridges down near the Thames Center? I've seen that proposed by a few different developers. Why, with the Mount Bridges water report, when it shows that we have capacity that's up to 100%? So on the report we get every spring, the last 2 years have showed water usage in June and July has been above 100%. I'm assuming your graph is showing the annual averages. Will this extra reservoir get us to our water report will show us below 100% usage? The Strathroy Lagoon twinning, I realize that is in our budget, but it hasn't been started yet. Is that in the, sorry, do you want me to slow down so you can write them? I'm going kind of quick. I am almost done, but I can repeat it.
I'm following you.
So is the Strathroy Lagoon twinning in the capital list, or is that something that we can take out of our budget to free up some capital for some of these other projects? And the last one, is the pricing model on the final page all in 2023 dollars, or have you put an inflation factor in to get into when we're actually doing the projects? Like if it's 10 years out, are there 10 years of whatever inflation, 3 or 4, whatever number we're using? Or is it all in 2023 dollars? So those are my 4 top questions.
Okay, so the last one first, because that's probably the simplest, is $2024. So
there's no inflation. So if we're gonna,
there's no inflation, you know, and again, the construction inflation is different than consumer price inflation. So yeah, it's the simplest thing is to keep it in $2024, and then it's sort of incumbent on staff and council to realize if the numbers, if you're doing something in 2030, it may not be $7 million in 2030. It will be whatever it would be in $20-30 in that year.
right, so we could be in the same situation as Collingwood, where they budgeted for a wastewater plant in 2019 and they built it in 2023 and we're 50% over budget. Not saying that we are, but we could be in that same situation because we're using.
That is a big concern. We recently did a large municipal, a large project. We did a value engineering exercise for a large client somewhere in southern Ontario for a water treatment system that sort of had the same question. It started out at 50 and the last one was at 150 after Collingwood. So they said, okay, is it really going to be this much? And you know, I said, well, it depends on if you want everything you said you wanted, and you know, there are some things that will take it down. But you know, the big problem we have right now is the battery. Well, it's a problem and a blessing is the battery plant. You know, I think that's going to probably, there's a lot of, you know, in this area there's going to be construction inflation for quite a few years. There's also housing inflation. So again, I think it's just, that's why when you go to the next phase of these projects, like in terms of the class environmental assessment for the wastewater plant or the storage facility, when you're doing the design of that, you're gonna, you know, you're gonna look at like, you know, you're gonna try to look at what makes the most sense, what's the best value, and you know, and unfortunately, like we can do all the estimates we want, but the only real estimate you get is when you tender it. So, so there's not much you can do, but I think we did. All these numbers that we had are based on, you know, they're not trying to give you good news. Because you're not necessarily going to be getting good news in the next 5 to 10 years in the construction market in Ontario.
Yeah, and just on that, so because they're all that there, even though it's not good news, it's probably better news than we should expect when we actually go forward with these projects in those
Well,
years.
yeah, and the other thing too is you just have to keep, you know, deciding what you want, and is this, you know, again, how much do you want and when do you want it, and, you know, try to keep the pinstripes off the wastewater plant and stuff like that, so.
Councillor Wilsey's other questions, just in the interest of time.
The lagoon twinning, that's the council staff matter. I have no opinion on whether or not you should go ahead with the twinning of the lagoons.
Yes, Mark.
Thank you, your worship. Yeah, we do have that in the capital plan for 2025 in the budget.
And I guess that was my question, because the consultant looked at what our current state is, but that's a project that hasn't been started yet, but it's on the budget. But according to his report, we don't need it. So, because it's not on the list of capital we need to do, and he said he wasn't taking a look at anything, because it's not on his list of capital. And he said he's looking at current state, and we haven't started it yet. So I guess when I put all those things together, that sounds like we don't need to twin the lagoon, because we have lots of extra capacity based on his study without the second lagoon.
So if I may, through...
Yeah, go ahead, and then, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair. Again, the project at Strathroy, the lagoon project, is a redundancy maintenance requirement for the plant. It is not a growth requirement. So the master plan, as John has mentioned, focuses on growth projects. So capacity increasing projects over time. The project at the Strathroy plant has no growth related component. And I might add just to your first question on the wastewater treatment plant as well. I'll let John make a comment to that, but again, this is high-level planning for master planning purposes. When we get into the detailed EA, which we're going to be in 2025, we'll be looking at the options, all the options on the table, and really trying to identify what the details are on each and determine the path forward. So this is a high-level assessment for planning and budgeting purposes, but the real work is going to be done in the Class C EA for wastewater servicing in Mount Bridges.
Yeah, I think, keep track. There's two more questions that he had, I believe.
Yeah, so the first question was on the location of the wastewater plant and why we had a force main. We haven't been privy to where a wastewater plant may or may not go. That's not the current plant in Mount Bridges. So basically I drew a circle around it, and I assumed the only real difference in the cost is probably going to be assuming that the collection, most of the current collection system in Mount Bridges comes down to the main street pumping station on the south side of the settlement area. So the assumption would be is that would be the starting point for flows from that plant, from that pumping station to wherever the wastewater, a new wastewater plant could go. Therefore, and you know, wherever it's going, north, south, east, or west, my assumption would be it'll be pumped. So we just arbitrarily picked a certain length of force main. So there are different high-level aspects of the costing of a new wastewater plant detailed in the master plan. The force main is one. I mean, the one issue as far as pumping every new development there is Mount Bridges is sort of at the center of the high point of three conservation areas. So depending on where you are, you're probably gonna, only one of those three directions is gonna get you gravity servicing.
And Councillor Wilsey's last questions, I think others have questions.
Yeah, I had the second one, but it slipped out of my short-term memory.
The last question I've got is with the added reservoir. With the Mount Bridges water report. So on the previous water reports, it showed that we were over 100% usage for 2 months of the year. I'm assuming your graph is averaged out for the year. My question is what if we were to add the extra reservoirs, will that get that rated usage so we are down below 100% rated usage on the water report that we get every year from our water department?
So having looked at the whole issue of capacity of water in both Strathroy and Mount Bridges, there's really, the only really way you can determine capacity is really running a hydraulic model. under your future conditions or your current conditions, because it is very complicated. Pumps, the system, pumps will turn on in response to a demand or a low pressure. And also there you have elevated stores that will draw down as well. So there's no one number at, I'm not sure where they're getting their 100% from, but there's really no one number in a system that you can say this is the capacity of the system. If you had a well source, you could say this is the capacity of the well, or one water treatment plant, you could say this is the capacity of the plant. When you're taking water from the Lake Huron system into your system, as I said, getting the water there is not a problem. The Lake Huron has to provide you with the flow and the pressure that you need, and then from there it's up to you to distribute it. So when we were looking at the issue with the storage is actually a number that the Ministry of the Environment has that they worked out that says for a certain size municipality, you shall have this much storage based upon a formula. And that's what we're correcting it to.
Okay, is there any other questions? Councillor Pelkman and Councillor Derbyshire.
Yes, so I'm assuming this is a living, breathing document. It will change as time goes on. Just in the stormwater management section, there were 3 ponds that I thought should be added to the list since we're creating the document. One would be at Longwoods and 402, where the 10 homes there are built. At Elwood and Saxton, just being built now, and Wallace Trail, I believe in Mount Bridges has one as well. I don't think we've assumed any of those yet, but they might as well be on the list since we will shortly.
And Councillor Derbyshire, you had a question or comment?
Thank you. Probably a couple. Obviously, we are not including what we're doing down at the wastewater treatment plant now. So I will probably just ask the cost of $25 million in 2030 for that plant down there, what is that for a new plant, or what is that 25 million for?
That is to expand the plant from 825 cubic meters a day in the current, I think it's at a 90% design stage, to what, like, we're assuming that the headworks building and the improvements to bring it to 825 will be incorporated into the expansion from 825 to 2348.
Okay. So then my next question would be, for what we're doing now, and this is probably through you to Director Ortiz. For what we're doing now down there, we are looking at doing a expansion tank. We are also looking at upgrading to open aeration, which will switch us to a different phase of doing things. In that open aeration, that will only get us to 825, or does this conversion have the ability to go higher than 825, but we're not applying to go higher than 825 at this moment?
Okay. Director Ortiz.
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire. Please feel free to remind me if I'm getting the questions wrong, but so currently at the plant there are two items which are going on. One is what we call maybe the interim solution. We're looking at utilizing the existing empty tank as an equalization tank. And that would help with balancing flow coming into the plant. The other process is more of a long-term, the longer-term project, which is converting the 3 existing tanks to extended aeration. That is the main project that RVA is speaking about, which would give us the 825 cubic meters per day. Excuse me. To go anything beyond 825, we would need to do a further study and look at what the capacity of the plant is, and there's no ability currently to go beyond 825 without additional study and additional investigation, if that is possible.
One more, Council.
Better make her good then. Okay, I'm just gonna ask it then. So at what point in this process do we do the Schedule C and the EA? So are we doing it now?
Thanks.
Are we doing it now before we start any of this process of switching to the second interim solution? Or are we waiting until we're halfway through this and then we're going to do a Schedule C to see what's going on and to prepare for our upgrade? Or are we waiting until we switch to open aeration at the end and then doing the EA and Schedule C?
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire. It's a great question. So we are in the process of starting the EA, and that would be done in parallel with the current plan. As John had mentioned, there is a design in place being designed for extended duration. The current plan is for extended duration to be constructed at the plant next year in parallel with the Class EA for expansion. So the extended duration. Oh my God.
Thank you. Can I?
You can ask your question, then we'll let him have his moment.
Sure. So when I ask, when we switch to open aeration, are we increasing the capacity? We are. Well, it says you're working the Schedule C, the EA and the Schedule C at the same time. So why would we put in a place that only does 825 and spend that money when, if we're going to expand and we're going to make this process a proper process, figure out what we need, how it works best. If we're doing the EA basically now, why would we go and spend $10 million to switch to open aeration to possibly want to change or reconfigure what we're doing down there?
I'm going to let you, I'm going to keep us on track, so that's a fair question, but as part of this, receiving the report, they're fair questions, Councillor, but I think that's a discussion for another day, because we're trying to receive this report.
You can't receive a report without knowing what we're doing here. I mean, we have money set aside for this. I mean, the EA says 2026.
Right, but he answered. Go ahead, answer.
Through the chair, again to Councillor Derbyshire, I will be bringing a report to Council specifically on Mount Bridges and the aeration and that whole process and how it works, hopefully at the next Council meeting, to answer some of your questions. Yeah.
So then what I would do is I would make a motion then that we defer this till after we have his report. We can receive it for information, but we don't move forward with action. If there's a whole other report coming that's going to shove us in possibly another direction or change this, then.
Okay. Did you make a motion?
Yes, I will make a motion that we receive this for information and defer it till after we receive Director Ortiz's report.
Second your motion. Deputy Mayor, any comment on it? Okay, the second motion, all in favor of Councilor Derbyshire to receive it and defer? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, motion carried.
Okay, Mr. Mayor? Just a question on that, not necessarily on the motion that was just passed, but when this comes back, if we've had a chance to review the study in more detail, will we be able to ask questions again if there's questions that weren't answered tonight?
Yes, certainly. Okay, thank you. Report, thank you for that report, thank you. Reports from boards and committees, there are 3. Motion of the reports from boards and committees be received for information. Someone bring a motion to it. Deputy Mayor, second by Councilor Derbyshire. Any questions? All in favor, carried. Deputy Mayor.
Short county meeting last time we met, nothing to report.
Thank you. Inquiries and comments, we'll start with the Deputy Mayor.
Can't think of anything offhand, thank you.
Councillor Palmer.
Just a recognition of the wonderful poppy display going on outside Town Hall and in Mount Bridges. Thank you and congratulations to the army of people that put that together. I know there was a lot of volunteer time involved and staff time. I think it's great. I also just wanted to mention that there is, coming up in November for Remembrance Day, there's a whole series of events planned. Check out the museum and the municipality website. There's lots of ways, lots of interesting things coming your way to commemorate the month, and hopefully you can participate.
Councillor Derbyshire.
Thank you. I was gonna just echo Donna's thing for Remembrance Day. Let's make sure we get out and celebrate.
Councillor Pelkman.
Nothing at this time.
Yep. Councillor Brandon.
Nothing tonight.
Councillor Wilsey.
I was just going to say to remember to support your legions. We've got events in all 3 of our towns coming up. We've got the Bridges and the Strathroy-Cenotaph coming up next Monday, and I believe Melbourne's is the following Saturday.
Melbourne's is the Sunday.
Sunday.
Sorry, it's I knew it was coming up on the weekend, but they're all coming up, and we should attend them.
We do our own things in Melbourne. Councillor Hippel.
Thank you. Well, everyone has talked about the Remembrance Day services, so I will leave that at, I just wanted to echo Donna's comments on how incredible the poppies were when they were decorating Town Hall and Mount Bridges. They're gorgeous, and thank you to everyone that was involved in that. I do have a quick question. I've had a few residents mentioned to me that they're very happy with and excited that we have indoor walking and pickleball in Mount Bridges. But their issue is it's not at night and everybody works during the day. And yes, there is a portion of people that can do that throughout the day, but knowing that there is a even bigger portion of people that are really interested in this and that would like to also participate, we're wondering if there would be a chance that you would be able to extend this to nighttime hours per se. I don't know what those hours are, just if that was something that we could work towards to encompass more people.
Through the chair to Councillor Hippel, we can look at it. The challenge with the evening is those are our rentable hours, and facilities primarily used, whether it's through scouting or the Lions Club or other rentals. That becomes the challenge. But we can look and see what may be available. If there is a time period that's consistent, whether it's 4 to 6 or 5 to 7 or whatever. So we'll take a look.
Thank you, that's it for tonight.
Yeah, no comments from me. Schedule of meetings are 2 upcoming meetings, the Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, November 12th, and the regular council meeting on Monday, November 18th. Consideration of bylaws, there are 5 in front of us this evening. Motion that those bylaws receive first.
Just to clarify, the reports were correct.
Oh, were they?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're looking for 1%.
Okay. There are now 3 in front of you, 107 to 109. Motion that those bylaws receive first, second, third, and final reading. Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Pelkman. All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn at 8:58 p.m. Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Hippel. All in favor? Carried. Opposed, if any? Thanks, folks.